The NFL season has officially concluded, and I was going to make this video a couple, weeks ago, but I wanted the Super Bowl to happen first, and I wanted everything to take place first before I made that video. Now the Super Bowl has concluded, and I can finally make this video. For the most part, we saw a lot of teams exceed expectations this year, and we saw a lot of teams perform way below expectations. A lot of teams that thought would be playoff teams didn't make the playoffs, and a lot of teams that weren't supposed to make the playoffs did make the playoffs. So it was a really weird year for pretty much all 32 NFL teams in my opinion. And in this video, we're going to be describing every team's NFL season using 4 words or less. Now, before I jump further into this video, I want to give a credit to 2 guys for this video, Synthetic Sports and WrestleTalk. WrestleTalk was the OG, creator of this type of video, and Synthetic Sports did it in an NBA version. Now, I'm going to do it in an NFL version. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this. Also, if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, tap the bell icon for future football content. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in this. Arizona Cardinals, well, just as expected. Arizona Cardinals finished the season with a 4-13 record. Kyler Murray missed a huge portion of the season, and Joshua Dobbs was their quarterback for a huge portion of that same season. However, when Kyler Murray came back, the Cardinals offense did show up a little bit. However, it's pretty clear that this team still needs a lot more weapons around Kyler Murray and a few more pieces on their offensive line. One thing that Jonathan Gannon said the Cardinals were going to do during his whole tenure with the team was continue to fight and not back down, and that's what the Cardinals did the whole season. However, it didn't really result in much, but in the end, they showed up in a lot of these games for the most part. I mean, just look at some of the teams they came close with and 2 of the teams they beat. They came close to beating the Baltimore Ravens. They beat the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys, 2 teams that made the playoffs. So for the most part, the fight was there for the Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals are going to be in one of the harder divisions to play in, obviously, if they want to improve. You obviously have the 49ers who pretty much run that division. You have the Rams who are pretty good, and you have the Seahawks who aren't necessarily bad, but they're a pretty sticky good team when they want to be for the most part. But if the Cardinals want to see any improvement in the future, they got to maximize Kyler Murray's potential, put some weapons around him, and hope that that defense under Jonathan Gannon improves in the future. The Atlanta Falcons, what a waste of an offense. The Atlanta Falcons finished the regular season 7-10. At the end of the season as well, they fired Arthur Smith. And as much as I hate to say it, I can't blame them. This team had a lot of playmakers on offense, and they failed to utilize them in a big way. Kyle Pitts, underutilized. Drake London, underutilized. Bijan Robinson, underutilized. On top of having great playmakers, the Falcons' offensive line was one of the best in the league. However, 2 things didn't work out for them in their favor. Arthur Smith and then Desmond Ridder in the end, who did them no favors whatsoever. Now, I want to take you back to last offseason. The Falcons have had a lot of opportunities to possibly try and upgrade their quarterback position. Last offseason, Arthur Blank came out and said that they were not going to be pursuing Lamar Jackson. Oh, really? And then a year before that, they were also saying that they were not interested in pursuing Deshaun Watson. Now, the Deshaun Watson one, you can say, okay, they kind of probably did the right thing there. With Lamar Jackson, I'm pretty sure most of you are going to argue, yeah, that was a pretty dumb decision. And I know some of you are thinking, well, the Falcons were not going to get Lamar Jackson anyway. The Ravens weren't going to trade him. Well, they still couldn't have came out and saying that either. I mean, anything would have been better than saying that, honestly. Ridder finished season throwing 12 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. He proved that he was not the guy for the Falcons, and he proved that he was just an average quarterback for the most part. Me personally, I would be very shocked if the Falcons don't draft a quarterback or get a quarterback in free agency in this year's draft. Seeing as Taylor Heineke, when he played pretty better than Desmond Ridder for the most part, so that should tell them something. And if they don't get a quarterback in this year's draft or in free agency, they're going to just be telling everybody that they're going to be wasting this offense for a long years to come. The Baltimore Ravens, a disappointing end. The Baltimore Ravens finished the season with a 13-4 record as the first seed in the AFC. Not only that, their defense was absolutely dominant all year. Now, then we go into the playoffs. They knocked out the Texans, and Lamar Jackson looked pretty good in that game. Their defense looked pretty good too. Then you go into the AFC Championship game. Their defense still looked pretty good. Their offense, on the other hand, didn't look so good. Their defense looked pretty good for the most part. They kept Mahomes in check, but it wasn't enough as their offense wasn't able to generate much. On top of that, the Ravens consistently had turnovers in this game that consistently cost them the game, and that would be their downfall for the most part. With Mike McDonald going to the Seahawks. The question is, can the Baltimore Ravens repeat the success they had last season despite him being gone? That is going to be the question we have to ask ourselves for the future for the Ravens. On top of that, we also have to ask ourselves this: can Lamar Jackson show up in big games? He showed up against the Texans, but in the AFC Championship game, he didn't show up. The Buffalo Bills can't catch a break. The Buffalo Bills started off their regular season pretty rough for the most part. Their offense looked pretty much out of sync. However, after firing Ken Dorsey, making Joe Brady the prime offensive coordinator, the Bills' offense looked back to their normal selves. James Cook started to look like a whole new running back, and Josh Allen like him normal self. And the Buffalo Bills are going to win 5 straight going into the playoffs. They would knock out the Steelers in the first round. However, in the second round against the Chiefs, they came once again pretty close to winning this game. However, Tyler Bass would have missed the field goal that would have sent into overtime, and the Buffalo Bills would end up losing this game. And it's like luck is never on the Bills' side. A couple years ago, they came down to overtime. The Chiefs took it right down the field and scored in their first possession, and Josh Allen never got a chance to get on the field. At this point, you really got to ask yourself, is Buffalo cursed or something? First, you lose 4 Super Bowls, and then when you have a chance to go to the Super Bowl, you lose 2 chances on that. The question's pretty interesting at this point, but we got to do some research into that, honestly. For the Carolina Panthers, you could use a few words here, and they're not really good ones, but we're going to keep it simple and just say a complete disaster. The Carolina Panthers finished the season 2-14, and it was a disaster all around. Aside from their defense, their offense was easily the worst in the league. Bryce Young looked absolutely terrible, but it wasn't his fault, like I said. Frank Wright, terrible. The offensive line, terrible. The weapons, also terrible. And it's no shock to anyone that Frank Wright got fired before the season even ended, and also their GM also got fired as well. Make matters worse for the Panthers, they would have had the first overall pick in this year's draft, but in order to get Bryce Young, they traded that pick away. So an all-around disaster would be perfectly fitting for the Carolina Panthers in their 2023 season. Just an all-around disaster, and that's all it is. Chicago Bears, a season with a lot of questions. Chicago Bears finished the regular season with a 7-10 record, and they're going to go into an off-season with a lot of questions now. Now, they do have the first overall pick in this year's draft, but there have been a lot of rumors that the Bears are keen on keeping Justin Fields, but then there are also rumors that they are going to be getting Caleb Williams first overall in this year's draft. As you may remember, the Bears were in a situation last year where they could have took a quarterback and traded Justin Fields. They're going to be in a situation once again where you have quite possibly a better quarterback in this position. Justin Fields didn't look terrible last season, but in the end, he still didn't look like a franchise quarterback, which is why the question, of him being that guy still remains the same. The Cincinnati Bengals, just very unlucky. Bengals somehow finished season 9-8 despite Joe Burrow having a season-ending injury and Jake Browning being a quarterback for the rest of the season. More likely than not, Joe Burrow most likely leads his team to the playoffs if he's healthy. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. T. Higgins and also Jamar Chase also dealt with some injuries this season, so that didn't exactly help their case. Luckily for the Bengals though, they'll probably be back unless something else happens, but I'm not gonna wish that into existence. The Cleveland Browns fought through adversity. Cleveland Browns started 4 different quarterbacks this season: Deshaun Watson, PJ Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and Joe Flacco. Despite all this, Joe Flacco came out of basically a mini retirement and somehow led this Browns team to the playoffs. Even though they got hammered by the Texans, they still made it there despite the injuries they went through this season. Mr. Stefanski ended up winning Coach of the Year, and Joe Flacco ended up winning Comeback Player of the Year. Falling through adversity is something they pretty much did all offseason. They didn't back down due to the injuries, and they kept fighting, and it ended up pretty well for them for the most part. The Dallas Cowboys, let's be honest, same old, same old. The Dallas Cowboys finished the regular season with a 12-5 record, and they managed to win the NFC East after the Eagles had a collapse. I think you know how this is gonna go. They ended up facing the Packers, that 7-seed team in the first round, and they got absolutely hammered by Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Despite having one of the best offenses and defense in the league, once again, the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott, and Mike McCarthy failed to show up in a big game when they were needed the most. But This is typical Cowboys fashion. They end up making the playoffs, and what happens? They end up choking either the first or second round. This is why nobody is surprised at this point, and this is why it's just a simple same old, same old. The Denver Broncos, just absolutely confusing. Look, at one point the Denver Broncos were finally back and they were finally going to prove themselves in the NFL. But then they lost to the Patriots, and everything after that was a complete failure for the Broncos. In a very controversial move, the Broncos ended up benching Russell Wilson for the rest of the season in favor for Jarrett Stidham. Despite the fact that Russell Wilson is still playing on a very huge contract, which by the way, they still can't get out of this contract without taking a huge cap hit until 2026 basically. Now they can get out of it in 2025, but they'll still be taking a bit of a huge cap hit from that dead cap. And the reason why I said it's just absolutely confusing because I really don't know what to think of with the Broncos right now. They're just a really weird team. I mean, if they draft a quarterback, he'll be way behind Russell Wilson for either a year or two. And then if you keep Russell Wilson, you're probably going to be in the same situation once again. Like I said, it's just really confusing right now. Broncos, let's ride. Get it together. At this point, are y'all sure y'all the best team in Colorado right now? Because it might be. Okay, yeah, I forgot about the Nuggets. I was gonna make a joke and say it was the Buffaloes, but y'all got this one. The Detroit Lions, oh so close. Broncos shot the entire NFL when they finished with a 12-5 record, knocking off the Rams in the first round, knocking off the Buccaneers, and then coming very close to knocking off the 49ers in the conference championship game. However, despite the fact that they did suffer a really disappointing loss, the Lions are going to be contenders in the NFC for a while now. They have a really young team, they have a really good head coach, and Brian Johnson looks like he's going to be really loyal to this team for a while. So like I said before, I think they're going to be good for the next couple years in my opinion. The Green Bay Packers, pretty easy here. Love is in the air. This was Jordan Love's first season as a Green Bay Packer as a starter for the team, and he threw for over 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. He led the Packers to a playoff win over the Cowboys, and was oh so close to knocking off the first seed 49ers in the divisional round. Love did great despite the fact he had a pretty, not too good receiving core. I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't the best either. And think about what the Packers could do if they get him an even better wide receiver one. He is going to be in MVP talks next year, in my opinion. So yeah, love is truly in the air. And I find this ironic that I say that because the day before I'm making this is Valentine's Day, and the day I'm releasing it is probably Valentine's Day. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. The Houston Texans, what a huge surprise. The Texans were expected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL prior to this season. You know what they came in here then? They came in here and shocked everybody and finished the regular season with a 10-7 record and knocking out the Browns in the first round of the playoffs. Not only that, CJ Stroud had an absolutely amazing season, having one of the best seasons for a rookie we've ever seen. Not only that, he also won Offensive Rookie of the Year in the process. This Texans team reminds me a lot of the Lions. They have a lot of young players and they have a really good quarterback at the helm, and honestly, they keep adding players. I can't see why the Texans can't be a contender in the AFC come next year or for the next couple years, matter of fact. Indianapolis Colts, luck was just simply not on your side. Despite the injury to AR5, the Colts managed to stay in the playoff hunt for the next couple weeks despite this, and Gardner Minshew managed to help them stay competitive in that race as well. Unfortunately, a dropped pass in the game against the Texans would end up ending their season and eliminating the Colts from the playoffs. On the bright side, Shane Steichen showed a lot of promise in his first year, and AR5 will be healthy, and I have to imagine if he's healthy next year and he stays healthy the entire season, this Colts team will be back in the playoff hunt once again. The Jacksonville Jaguars, absolutely disappointing. It looked like the Jaguars were having a really great start to the season, starting 8-3. However, they would proceed to lose 4 straight games after this. Then, in a winning game against the Titans, they would also lose that game as well. Not only that, Trevor Lawrence did not look that good this season, throwing for over 21 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. For a guy who is called a generational quarterback, let's be honest, he does not look like a generational quarterback to this point. The Jaguars would then proceed to fire pretty much their entire offensive staff after the collapse they had. The Jaguars are going to have a lot to prove next season, and especially Trevor Lawrence, who's going to be up for an extension come 2025 as well. But this was definitely a very disappointing outing for a team who started 8-3 and finished 9-8 and lost their playoff spot because they lost to the Titans, a team who didn't finish that well as well. The Kansas City Chiefs. undeniable. Simple as that. The Kansas City Chiefs had the entire NFL fooled when they thought they were pretty much out and done of it. Patrick Mahomes looked shaky, Travis Kelce wasn't exactly, looking the part, and their entire receiving core outside of Rashee Rice was also looking pretty shaky. But then they went into the playoffs, they knocked off the Miami Dolphins, just barely beat the Chiefs, they knocked off the Ravens, and they proceeded to beat the first seed 49ers in the Super Bowl. And Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl MVP. As I said before, undeniable, because Patrick Mahomes is simply undeniable. The Chiefs are simply undeniable. You can doubt them anytime you want, but then in the end, they're going to come back and look at you and say, you still going to doubt us? And that's exactly what they did. Not to mention, they two-peated. When was the last time we saw a team go back-to-back? Yeah, it's been a while. Undeniable, like I said. The Las Vegas Raiders trust Antonio Pierce. After that embarrassing loss to the Jets, the Raiders decided to clean house, firing Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler and making Antonio Pierce the interim head coach. They also benched Jimmy Garoppolo for the rest of the season and made Aiden O'Connell the starter. While they didn't finish with a winning record, they finished with an 8-9 record, and while like I said, that's not impressive or anything like that, if you look at the Raiders team the entire season, they played with a lot more fire and they played with a lot more determination under Antonio Pierce, and that tells us a lot about Josh McDaniels and the way he ran that team. When you have guys like Max Crosby who are willing to leave the team if they don't make Antonio Pierce the new head coach of the team, yeah, that kind of tells us how much these guys love Antonio Pierce. Now, it's going to be a hard run-up when you play in the AFC West, but obviously the Chiefs running that division. Then you have the Chargers who are going to be somewhat improved, and then you have the Broncos who aren't bad but could be sneaky. So it's going to be a hard run-up. Trust Antonio Pierce. I think he's going to find a way, in my opinion. Los Angeles Chargers. Better days are coming. Chargers finished the regular season with a 5-12 record, losing 5 straight games on their way out. Justin Herbert had a season-ending injury, and Brandon Staley looked absolutely horrible as a head coach, and rightfully so, he got fired. After a lot of hype and a lot of talk, they brought in Jim Harbaugh as the new head coach for the team, and it looks like this team can only go up now with him as the head coach. Now, the only question remains, can Justin Herbert prove to everybody that Brandon Staley was proving him back, or will he prove everybody wrong and prove that he was the one holding the Chargers back? Which I highly doubt will be the case, but we've seen surprises already as it is. Definitely going to be one of the more intriguing storylines going into the NFL season in 2024. Los Angeles Rams, they're sort of back. Rams finished the regular season with a 10-7 record, and they lost to the Detroit Lions by 1 point in the wild card round. Matthew Stafford looked absolutely great, and Puka Nacua looked absolutely amazing, drafted in one of the later rounds of the NFL draft in 2023. However, he set multiple rookie records, multiple franchise records, and he's like one of the best receivers in the league. Whatever the Rams decide to do this season or this offseason, I think they're going to be completely fine if they want to find a new quarterback or if they want to keep Matthew Stafford. I can't imagine it's going to halt them in any way. As long as Sean McVay is the head coach for that team, this team is always going to be good in my opinion. Miami Dolphins. Is Tua really that guy? Miami Dolphins made the playoffs. However, they only scored 7 points in their playoff game, despite having a stacked offense with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Devon Achane. Questions surrounding Tua are going to continue to remain the same. Is he the franchise guy for this team? Can he win the big one? And is he truly the one for the Dolphins to this point? At this point, there's going to be questions until he proves otherwise to this point. But as of right now, I can't say confidently that Tua has proved that to this point. Minnesota Vikings, very unfortunate. They're starting 0-3. The Minnesota Vikings slowly started to climb back into the race, and they could have made the playoffs this year. Before Kirk Cousins unfortunately tore his Achilles, they got out to a 4-4 record. Then Joshua Dobbs came in, and they came out to a 6-4 record. However, it was pretty evidently clear that Joshua Dobbs or neither of the quarterbacks they were using were not long-term options. They began to struggle as the season went on. Not to mention, injury to Justin Jefferson didn't make things a whole lot better for them as well. They finished the regular season with a 7-10 record, and Kirk Cousins' status with the Vikings is up in the air right now as he's a pending free agent, and right now it is pretty iffy on if he'll be back, but I have to imagine the Vikings, after what he did last season, he probably will be back. But if he stay healthy the entire season, I think the Vikings do make the playoffs though. New England Patriots, the end of an era. The New England Patriots ended the season with a 4-13 record. Not only that, Bill Belichick was fired at the end of the season. Derek Mayo was hired to be the new head coach of the team, and Mac Jones, their first-round pick in 2021, it looks like he will not be back with the team, at least as a starter next season. Bill will go down as one of one of the greatest head coaches of all time, in my opinion. But it was time for a change in New England, and it came here. You have to imagine a new regime, an entire new era, and a new quarterback is on his way to the Patriots, and I'm eager to see how it pans out. New Orleans Saints, nothing special, just mid really. New Orleans Saints finished the regular season with a 9-8 record. They were one win away from possibly making the playoffs, but the Packers won that game in week 18 and they got eliminated. Their big quarterback signing, Derek Carr, had a sustainable season, throwing for over 3,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 8 receptions. It's not anything special, but it was sustainable, as I said. Dennis Allen's going to be the head coach next year, which kind of surprised me. I think he should have been fired, but it is what it is, not my team. Like I said, simply mid, and I said mid because I think this is a team that should have had way better outcomes based off the roster they had, but that's not what happened. The New York Giants stop overpaying for certain quarterbacks. The New York Giants finished the regular season with a 6-11 record, and they look terrible for the most part. Their offensive line, terrible. Their offense in general, terrible. Daniel Jones, the $160 million guy, terrible. 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and under 1,000 yards passing. The Giants also started 2 other quarterbacks this season. The Italian phenom, Tommy DeVito, and also Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor looked okay, and Tommy DeVito also looked surprisingly okay for a few games as well. But the Giants in the end overpaid for Daniel Jones off one good season, and that was a huge mistake. Now they're in a situation where if they draft a quarterback, they probably can't start him immediately because of this contract, honestly. As I said before, one of my shorts, that contract in particular is going to cause a lot of standards for a lot of quarterbacks in their contracts now. Thanks a lot, Daniel Jones. It's your fault. But I know Joe Shane is regretting signing Daniel Jones to that contract as of right now. New York Jets. Quarterbacks are cursed here. Aaron Rodgers played one single drive for the Jets and he got injured and he was out for the rest of the season. Zach Wilson came in and did not make things any better as he was also pretty mid as well. Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian, you name it, they also were needle movers during this time for the Jets. It's like every quarterback who comes to the Jets is doomed to fail. Either they're going to suffer a really terrible injury or they're going to be trash. No in between. I guess the positive for the Jets is that Aaron Rodgers will be back next season, and if he's healthy, I can guarantee the Jets will be a contender in the AFC next season. As much as I hate Jets fans, I hope Aaron Rodgers is healthy next season for the sanity of your fan base. And as much as I don't want to see you drag New York Giants fans about the season y'all had, honestly, y'all needed more than us at this point. Y'all have been the bottom tier of New York for the last couple years, even more bottom tier than the Buffalo Bills, honestly. So, yeah, like I said, y'all needed more than us at this point. Like, I'm seriously, legitimately hoping y'all do somewhat good next season. Philadelphia Eagles, an absolute collapse. Eagles, for the most part, were everybody's favorites to running back in the NFC once again and make it back to the Super Bowl. And for the most part, it looked like they were on track to do that as they started the season 10-1. However, they would then meet the 49ers and they would get absolutely bounced 42-9. They would then proceed to lose to the Cowboys, the Seattle Seahawks. They would somehow beat the Giants, but then they lost to the Cardinals. And then they would run it back with the Giants and this time lose against them. Going on a 10-1 start, the Philadelphia Eagles will lose 5 out of their last 6 games to end the season. Not to mention, in the playoffs, the Buccaneers had their way with them as they lost that game 32-9. There were talks that Nick Sirianni was possibly going to get fired after the end of the season with the collapse the Eagles had. Instead, Brian Johnson and Matt Patricia would all get fired. To make matters worse, A.J. Brown is now disgruntled with the team, and his status with the Philadelphia Eagles for the future right now is kind of unknown. And it's honestly not too early to ask the Eagles, are they regretting that Jalen Hurts contract yet? Are you? Well, we're gonna wait to ask that question, but honestly, I think I know the answer. Pittsburgh Steelers, thank goodness for your defense. The Pittsburgh Steelers easily had one of the worst offenses in the league this season, with Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, and Mason Rudolph being their starting quarterbacks for the team. However, they also had one of the better defenses in the league that kept them in track, led by TJ Watt. They managed to finish the regular season with a 10-7 record. Not only that, Mike Tomlin's streak of not having a season below 500 kept going. You have to imagine if the Steelers' defense was any worse than what they were, what would their record be, and what would Mike Tomlin's situation be right now? In all seriousness though, if the Steelers get a good quarterback anytime soon, this team is going to be absolutely unstoppable, and I'm not even joking when I say that. If they get just an above average quarterback, he doesn't even have to be elite, honestly. They'll be a Super Bowl contender in the next couple years, as long as Mike Tomlin is the head coach, Joe. San Francisco 49ers, just more and more heartbreak. For the second time in the last 4 years, the 49ers made it back to the Super Bowl. However, once again, they had to meet Patrick Mahomes. And once again, Patrick Mahomes was just simply being undeniable, like I said earlier. And he made the 49ers pay as he once again knocked them off in the Super Bowl. You have to ask yourself, is the 49ers window of winning the Super Bowl slowly closing? And when will it close, honestly? Because you have to think about this. Christian McCaffrey is eventually going to get old. Deebo Samuel, with the injuries he's having, we don't know how much longer he's going to have left in the league. And Brandon Ayuk, his contract situation is up in the air. So we don't even know if he's going to be back next season. And these defenders you have on your team right now aren't getting any younger. So like I said before, you have to ask yourself, when is the window closing? And then with Brock Purdy, you also have to ask yourself, can you win the Super Bowl with him despite the fact he did the unthinkable for the past 2 seasons? Can you truly win it with him? You have to ask yourself that. But once again, the heartbreak for the 49ers just continues and continues to keep happening. Seattle Seahawks, also just mid. Seahawks finished the regular season with a 9-8 record, just missing out on their second consecutive playoff berth. Not only that, after the end of the season, they fired Pete Carroll, their longtime head coach, and they brought in Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald. Seahawks were not a bad team, just very inconsistent. Geno Smith regressed. Their defense wasn't all that good. Their run defense was good though, but their secondary got absolutely torched almost all season, and Tariq Woolen regressed a whole lot. But with Mike McDonald as the new head coach of the team, you can only imagine that this defense is going to be massively improved next season. But the only question remains now, who's going to be their quarterback? Geno Smith did sign a $75 million deal, which means the Seahawks are not inclined to keep him if they don't want to. So I would have to imagine they will be quarterback shopping in the 2024 NFL Draft. This team is also still young, so I would have to imagine this team is going to be pretty good for the next couple years as long as they do the right job. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, all aboard the Mayfield. Baker Mayfield shocked the entire NFL when he had a revival of his NFL career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, throwing for over 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. He also knocked out the Philadelphia Eagles in the first round of the playoffs, but unfortunately fell to the Detroit Lions in the second round. Mayfield revived his NFL career, and for the most part, it looks like he's going to get a second contract with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it's going to be a big one. While Mayfield's contract situation seems pretty much set in stone, the only question we have now is, what's going to happen to Mike Evans? Will he get his contract extension this offseason, as he's also a pending free agent? Regardless though, it's safe to say that all Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans are on the Mayfield ship right now. Tennessee Titans, just man. Tennessee Titans finished the regular season with a 5-12 record. After the season, they shockingly fired longtime head coach Mike Vrabel, and they hired Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan. Not only that, longtime running back Derek Carr basically announced that he would be leaving the team after a long time with the team basically. But that's exactly what the Titans were this season. They were just mid. Will Levis came in and showed a few flashes, but he probably will be the starting quarterback for the Titans next year. Their defense was pretty mid too, nothing special. All around, this team was just mid. That's all it was. And I don't expect that to change next season. I think this team is going to go in full rebuild mode, but we've seen teams in rebuild mode shock everybody, so who knows? I wouldn't put it past them at this point. Finally, the Washington Commanders. Just pathetic. The Commanders are going to build on something to start the season. They started 2-0, but then after that Buffalo Bills game, they got absolutely trounced the rest of the way, losing 8 straight games to end the season. Sam Howell, the franchise quarterback for the Commanders, at one point. However, he would also have a collapse, throwing 21 touchdowns and 21 interceptions to end the season. He was also benched for Jacoby Brissett to end the season as well. Their offense in general was pretty disappointing too. Terry McLaurin regressed and Jahan Dotson also regressed. Their great defense that they were always known for was also pretty bad too. Finally though, Ron Rivera was finally fired. He should have been fired a long time ago honestly, but I don't care if he got fired. I think he should have stayed, honestly. But Ron Rivera got fired. Dan Quinn was brought in to be the new head coach. And Adam Peters was brought in to be the new GM of the team. But the Commanders, they do this every year, honestly. They're a team that should play way above expectations. And you know, with the roster they have, you would think this team is going to be somewhat a sneaky playoff team, right? Well, no, every year they manage to hype their team up and absolutely do nothing in the regular season and then not make the playoffs at all. It's pretty much the Cowboys, but just the regular season version of them, honestly. Just like with the Cowboys, when is it going to end? Are they also cursed? You got to ask yourself this at this point. Wow, we are finally done with that video. God dang, I hope these people don't hear me talking about how long I made this video, how much I didn't want to. Oh shoot, I'm still recording. But I want to say, if you got to this point in the video, I want to thank you guys so much. Y'all are some OGs. Y'all are some real ones. Y'all deserve the world, honestly. If y'all made it to this point in the video, I'm not even joking. But if you have made it to this part of the video, make sure you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel, tap the bell icon for future football content, for future sports content. Don't worry, I say that all the time. We're gonna get to it though. And also follow me on my social media, it's down below in the description. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that is down below in the description. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.